How is it going tonight, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of my third attempt to get the show off the ground and use this branding for something productive. Today is going to be, this is just going to be a one-on-one conversation style of show. And today I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine from high school who is now doing great things over at the Daily Caller, a man with the greatest name you'll ever hear, the voice of an angel, and he's actually pretty fun to talk to. So without further ado, please welcome Jobob Taeleifi.
What's up, man? That was a heck of an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to that.
Dude, all you got to do is be conscious at this point, and it's like you're doing better than half of the people doing it. So like
Thanks, man.
as long as you can actually like make a little bit of sense, the more sense you make, obviously the better, but like considering what you're hearing mostly coming out the other side, dude, just basically throw some spaghetti at the wall and you'll be good to go.
It's not even fun, honestly. It's not fun. Like we'll have clips on the Daily Caller shows that you're like I don't even need to argue against this. This is not like a debatable worthy cause. They just said something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And now I have to comment on it. Like the comment is the video. There's no need. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think it's to your point, but
welcome to the point in time where basically satire writes itself, where you actually have to start reading headlines and you're like, is this the Babylon Bee? Okay, it's not. It's not the Babylon Bee. She's like, Elizabeth Warren today said something along the lines of, I'm so glad we got every single American out of Afghanistan with no one left behind. And I was like,
yeah.
Wait, that's a real thing she said?
Yeah.
Oh, this is I'm getting a little worried right now. So what the hell is going on? Like, what is going on in our world?
So we're in like an information war age, where you can just say stuff. I think who was talking about it the other day that I was listening to or had on or something like that, where they're talking about like the other side does. I think it was Tucker talking about like Tucker was talking to Glenn Greenwald. Sorry, I'm glad I got that nailed down.
Glenn Greenwald's
but
dope.
Him and Greenwald were just like, look, they don't agree on really anything. Like Tucker's not going to be in agreement on Glenn Greenwald, except for the fact that the entire media landscape, especially your lefty narratives, just don't care anymore about saying things that are true because it doesn't matter. All that matters is the ratings. So if you just make something up and people get ratings, what incentive is there to fix it when the entire game is audience rating? It's an entertainment world is what it is.
And on top of that, I would say that they've also created such a narrative that they know they can play defense for whatever they want. So when Joe Biden comes out and says, hey, I've got this really big infrastructure plan that is, sure, it says 3.5 trillion on there, but we got a manufacturer's rebate that's going to drop that down to zero. I promise. Please don't look in the bag. There's nothing in there hiding away. And so when he says that, he knows that Don Lemon's going to go out there and be like, oh, yeah, totally. Like, yeah, free 99 for this social reform package.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. It's a crazy world. So the thing that like I've been hitting on, and it's interesting. I get some heat from some of the Daily Caller commenters on stuff because my only thing is we're gonna be fair. Like, yes, I've got a conservative bent, and yes, I think less government is better for all of us. But at the same time, if somebody from the other side makes a good argument, we're gonna take that argument head on, as opposed to pretend that it didn't happen, which is what your lefty media does. Because there's pretending that the argument that's maybe good from the other side is non-existent doesn't do anybody ever good, any good. But it's interesting because I've seen some heat from some of the people that watch the show in the comment section of like, dude, this is and stop me if I go on tangents because I can go on rants. But
I do the same, man.
Chris Wallace had Alejandro Mayorkas on his Sunday show over the weekend and just hammered Mayorkas on the border thing. Like he said, like, why did you guys let them in the border in the country to begin with? Why didn't you build a wall? Again, this is Chris Wallace. Yeah. But the very idea of having a Chris Wallace clip on the show, people were like up in arms about. And I was like, dude, like, I don't want to have to defend Chris Wallace. Did he screw up the debate with Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Absolutely. But he's also making a good point here. So, let's listen to what he's saying.
It's like people they've lost the concept of, I can appreciate when you do something good and I can I'm going to criticize you when you do something wrong, which is how you should treat politicians. It's not, politicians aren't celebrities, right? Politicians aren't out there to be, like praise and stuff, which is part of my problem with the conservative movement and Trump. It's like, look, you can say he's doing a lot of things well, and he is really speaking to things that the base really cares about. But you got to be able to acknowledge when he's messing up, such as not doing any of this stuff he wanted to the first 2 years of his term when he had all three parts, all three houses. Mm-hmm. The executive, the House, and the Senate, he had control of all three, and he didn't really do anything with it. So people fetishize our politicians, they fetishize our celebrities and our commentators, which is a lot of the reason why as soon as they mess up once, they're done, because people create this perfect image in their mind, and they look at these celebrities, they look at everybody out there, and they're like, yeah, this person's just so great. Everything they say is great. And then they say one bad thing or they do one bad thing and their career's over because people are like, you're not perfect? Why would you disappoint me like that? I thought you were perfect. And it's, dude.
Here's an unpopular opinion. I don't think that actually ends up changing, unfortunately. I think if I'm seeing anything in human nature, it's that we'll continue to keep doing that sort of thing. And trust me, I don't want that to be true. If there's anybody who's going to tell you that I know enough politicians that you would know, I know enough of them on a person-to-person level to tell you that, oh yeah, they're crazy too, regardless of what party it is.
Dude.
Yeah. So that's a whole thing in and of itself.
Speaking of which, man, so tell me a little bit about like, how did you get into politics? Because you just started the Daily Caller thing, but you were actually working in the political landscape before that. So like, when you graduated, what led you to going into politics?
Complete and total utter accident was the thing. So this is kind of interesting. I haven't been able to like tell this story really, and I'll try to keep it as condensed as possible.
No, don't condense it, man. Tell the story. I want to hear it.
So in college, I ran for vice president of our school. I had a little bit of a mystified idea of what student government could do. I went to Azusa Pacific University.
Okay. Yeah.
And during my campaign, I thought we had more power than we did as a student, government authority. So I went out on our like quote unquote campaign trail and promised things that were so ridiculous. I was like, oh yeah, we could totally. We had a great acro tumbling team. And during like my big speech, where we're sitting in front of, 5,000 of the student bodies at chapel, I said, we're going to build the acro tumbling team a brand new gym. There's no way we could have done that. But I didn't know at the time. You
were Ben Wyatt.
I thought I had some sort of like sway on the administration that could actually get that done. Turns out I had no power whatsoever because I ended up winning the vice president role. And then I get there my senior year, I'm the vice president of our student body at Azusa Pacific. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't do anything. So retroactively, everything I said was just a total, complete, and utter lie. And so that was the framework that I started looking at politicians at. It's like, oh, they can say anything and nobody's gonna call them on it. Yeah, and so after college, I went and took a corporate job for a year. I was like, nah, I don't really like that. I've always been into video production. I was a big video guy, and I started doing videos for small businesses. Ended up doing a video for a mayoral candidate in Chino Hills, where my parents were from. Family friend. They ended up. I delivered a video to them. They were like, "Sweet, I don't know what to do with this." That's when I started getting into like Facebook ads, and then all of a sudden it blew up into, all right, now we're doing it, word of mouth spread. I started doing congressional races. We started buying TV time. Then we started buying radio stuff, and it kind of all culminated into like this agency that I still work with a lot of those guys today, actually running political campaigns. Probably most notably, I ran a guy against Gavin 2018. And it turned out the way it turned out because it was always going to turn out the way it's going to turn out. But made some pretty big waves. I think he was like this guy named Travis Allen. We ended up being like the biggest state elected representative on all social media platforms of all time at the time. We were like the biggest thing. Yeah, it was crazy. And it just kind of all snowballed into each other.
Real quick question, though. I do want to,
yeah.
So you said, of course, it turned out the way it was going to turn out. But what's really weird, and I tell people about this because they'll say California's been crazy forever. It's been absolutely batshit insane for as long as we can, I go, actually, though, as recently as 2008, California voted by a majority no against gay marriage, for gay marriage, right? They voted against gay marriage as recently as 2008. And it was, and they had Arnold Schwarzenegger right at that same time too, who was a California Republican, which is probably closer to a classical liberal. But it was like wasn't a blue state; it was still red. What do you think has happened between then and now that has just made it just such a radical collapse in that state?
To address the first part, the 2008, it was Prop 8 in 2000, for gay marriage. Just if you remember the time, Barack Obama was still against gay marriage at the time. Yep. So I don't know if I would attribute that to being a conservative value or just like the mainstream. As far as Arnold Schwarzenegger goes, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a registered Republican. I would not call him the way he got, backtrack a little bit. I would say the fact that Ronald Reagan was elected governor of California as a Republican doesn't necessarily speak to the conservative values of Californians. I think it speaks more to the stupidity of the populace in California. Because remember, Ronald Reagan won in a recall election. We recalled Gray Davis over the rolling blackouts. Then, sorry, am I saying Ronald Reagan? Meant Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So Arnold Schwarzenegger
you're saying.
Sorry, I think about Ronald Reagan because that I think is the last actual conservative governor of California. Arnold Schwarzenegger won in a recall election when we recalled Gray Davis because of the rolling blackouts. That was a special election, just like this recall was today. So in order to win a special election, you just have to be the most famous person on the ballot. That is literally all you have to do, especially before the age of the internet and all of that sort of stuff. So that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger won governorship in California. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like, we were conservative back then.
It's not conservative per se, but like California is now the beacon of the radical left's agenda as far as its application on a state level. Like California does represent what happens when a state goes full blue at this point, because since Arnold Schwarzenegger, they've had the Homeless Freedom Act, they've had Sika has been absolutely destroying that place. They've had, they've been reducing punishment on crimes. What I've noticed, though, is it really speaks volumes about the homeless population there and what is going on with the housing market. Because when I left for the military in 2012, I remember what it looked like. And every time I would come back, it would be a little worse. The homeless camps would be a little bit further from Skid Row. And at this point now, you drive around and everything, and it feels just broken. It does not feel like the California that I grew up in anymore. And when I say that, it's, it used to not necessarily be conservative, but it had a very moderate Democrat base. It had a very rational policy for a state that as big as it is. It had the fifth largest economy, and it wasn't the fifth largest economy because they were crap. But it's the teachers unions, the police unions, the fire unions, all of these things. It's so rapidly deteriorated the state. Like, do you think there was any stopping it, or do you think that it's just a direct result of California just going insane?
I think a lot of the stuff, the voters deserve a lot of blame for what's going on in California, because clearly they had to put those people into office.
Yeah.
But over the last election cycle, in 2020, California voters overwhelmingly decided to not get rid of Prop 13 and also not do there's a bunch of I should have specifics in my head, but I don't.
You're good.
But there's a bunch of non-tax raising measures on ballots that all pass through. None of the new tax increases that California wanted to put on citizens in California passed. A lot of them failed because they were up to a vote. Now, when you're talking about, and I know California specifically more than most states, so if you want to get into the weeds, there's Prop 47, Prop 57, AB 109. Those are all, Prop 47, Prop 57 were voted on by Californians in like these, again, not really knowing what they're doing going to the polls. And then AB 109 is in like crazy thing that's decriminalizing crime in California, and that's passed out of the state houses.
When you say decriminalizing crime, what specifically does that look like in policy terms?
So again, sorry, I assume that everybody knows what California is because it's so crazy that it should get.
I have a general idea, but the specifics when they say they're decriminalizing crime, I know a little bit about what's going on, but like because I'm not there, I don't really dive into it as much.
So in California, if you steal anything less than $950, it's no longer a felony; it's a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. It knocks down felony charges to misdemeanors across a bunch of like fraud, theft, grand theft, I think. And a couple other instances where if it's under $950, it's a misdemeanor, and at that point in California, it might as well be a traffic ticket. Yeah. And so that's what I mean by decriminalizing crime. Is like, well, this was a crime, and it still should be, but because we've changed the laws to say, oh well, if it's under $950, then it doesn't count, or it isn't a felony anymore. But here's the other thing too. I almost, you've heard the term low expectation, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
It kind of applies in California too, in this instance, because apparently lawmakers in California think that criminals are dumb. Criminals are criminals. They're not dumb. These guys are walking in Targets with calculators going like, all right, it's $947. Let's just leave now because nobody's going to do anything at $940. But it's $962, they're going to arrest us.
Yeah, no, well, it also goes back. It's actually a CRT principle. If you can look at the results of the policy and it has racially disparate outcomes, it is therefore racist, right? So generally speaking, when you're looking at crime statistics, Black people are going to be at the top, and it's going to be disproportionate compared to white people. Therefore, rather than addressing the fact, okay, so why is it that for some reason a lot of Black communities have really high crime rate, rather than addressing that, they say, no, the laws are racist. Black people just cannot be expected to follow the law. So what we have to do is stop punishing. That's the goal here. We have to stop punishing them. And it's really disgusting in terms of the racism.
So really quick, I guess, story about how, like, I'm a brown guy. My dad's an immigrant. So I tend to fall into right. Only brown guy named Jobob outside of a really tan crawfishman in Louisiana. So I've been fortunate enough to climb some interesting chains, especially in the back end of political campaigns.
Yeah.
In 2018, I was running a guy for mayor in Anaheim. Anaheim is a big city. It's a big little city. They've got the Ducks. They've got Disneyland. They've got the hotels. So
if you don't say the Angels, okay, I'm now offended.
Angels. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. To the point. Anaheim has a ton. Anaheim's a big city that matters, and a big city that Disney has a huge presence in.
Yes.
And the Angels and the Ducks and all of your entertainment in Anaheim. All that is to say that a mayor, like if you have $60,000, you can be the mayor of any city in America, except for obviously your big cities. Yeah. This was a multi-million-dollar race. And me, a 20-something-year-old kid who's going to oversee the entire operation for this campaign on the digital side, find myself in a room with I'm not going to disclose that. Some higher ups in the Chamber of Commerce at the Disney company and the Angels and the Ducks. I'm in a conference room with all of these people. All of them are older white guys.
Yeah.
And my group consists of me, another 30-something-year-old white guy, and another 35-year-old something white guy. And the last thing that I want is for any of those big players in that room to look at me and think, I wonder if he's the token hire or if he's actually any good. Because the way I see it, I earned my way into that room. Like,
Hell yeah.
I busted my butt and worked super hard to be good enough to earn a right to be in that room. The last thing that I want is all of those guys in that room looking at me and going, and having to wonder. I want them to, the fact that I'm there, I want them to intrinsically think, that guy, he's clearly here for a reason. Let's move on to the next thing and let's get this job done. I don't want them thinking, is this guy like the token hire? Should we really trust his opinion? Is he kind of just here to prop up the minority numbers in whatever this company is? Like that, nobody wants that. I don't know how I got on that, but this is my experience with, like, quote unquote, the soft bigotry of low expectations of, like, this is what it does to minority people. We can earn our way into a room and then have people questioning, should we be in there because of our accolades and ability, or are we there because the government said we have to be?
It creates so many problems. The soft bigotry of low expectations is basically the mindset of so many people on the left. They have this idea that because, you know, they read stuff like Ibram X. Kennedy, they read Robin DiAngelo, they read this really, really, you know, mid-wit level stuff, and they put ideas into their head that are basically unfalsifiable. It makes very unfalsifiable claims about things like racism and whiteness and all this other stuff. And it also, you know, makes people a lot more susceptible and receptive of really pernicious policy ideas, such as, because there's disparate racial outcomes and stuff, we must then remove the obstacle. It's making its way to school now too, because there are disparate outcomes in testing. We need to stop grading tests. But, you know, apparently we're not allowed to hold black and brown kids to the same intellectual standards as white kids and Asians, because hell if I know, man. But what it does is it also causes problems where, if you look at affirmative action, Walter Williams talks about this, Thomas Sowell talks about this, and I believe Shelby Steele even talks a bit about this. What affirmative action does is it just really screws over minorities, because when all of a sudden you have racial quotas that need to be met, first it raises the standards for you know, the ones that are in the majority, because now they're going to have less spots to be playing for, whereas before they were fighting for all of them. Now they're only fighting for a certain percentage of them, so all of a sudden their standards go way up. But what it also does is it drops the standard dramatically for black and brown people, the disadvantaged, because the reason why there's such a racial disparity is because when the qualifications were based on merit, a lot of black and brown people were not qualifying. Now, rather than being like, wait, why is that? If by dint of being black or brown, you know, that does not mean you have a lower IQ, then there must be other reasons. Okay, let's look at the public school system. Oh, it's broken. That's not the thought process that goes into any of it at all. What goes into it instead is we'll just make it all equal representation, and, you know, we'll take someone who got a 3.0 GPA in a Baltimore high school, which probably means they got a 1.0 at any other high school in America. You know, we'll take that person and put them in Harvard Law School. Okay, good luck. You know, we'll put them in Harvard or Yale, Princeton, something like that. It's like, what happens when you do that is the fail out rate for black and brown people that are for affirmative action purposes skyrockets. They do end up doing worse in their class. However, when it was based on merit, they were near the top of the class. There was like no visible discrepancy based on race, you know, with performance. It was actually a meritocracy, because those that deserve to be there needed to be there. And if you don't think there's enough black or brown people in there, start looking for the cause rather than just saying, well, we need to make it equal.
It's interesting too, the demographics of people that are proponents of meritocracy. Like I mentioned, I don't like to rest on my dad's an immigrant. But you will not find a more sink or swim type person than a guy who's had to sink or swim and has decided to swim. Almost pretty much all of my friends who have immigrant parents or are immigrants themselves look at that situation and go, what in the world? It's not until you're like third, maybe fourth generation kids are coming in and thinking, oh, well, I deserve something. I know this really great family that goes to our church. They're from Uganda, and the dad came over from Uganda legally, has busted his butt, got all of his family over there, his wife and his 2 daughters from Uganda here, and they are productive, incredible people that add so much to the fabric of our society. None of them are saying, well, because they're black, by the way, from Uganda.
Yeah. Who would have guessed? Oh my gosh!
But it doesn't matter to them. It is. I'm a hard worker, and I'm intelligent, and I have a drive in me that is going to propel me to the top of whatever field I want to be at, and that's just the attitude.
Yeah.
Now, statistically, I think generation after generation of being in the United States, you start to get that whole entitlement, I guess, for lack of a better term.
But, I think there's more to it too than that.
I don't know what you do about it.
Yeah, well, because I think you're actually missing a very key point. It's not about, it's not necessarily about how many generations after. It's about what age the kids end up in a public school here in America. Because what happens...
Sorry, I want not to cut you off. I've been doing this thing. You don't have to do it, but I'm doing this thing where I call them government schools. For some reason, it's the same thing.
No, it is.
But public school sounds like the blue collar working man. Government school sounds exactly like what they are, and failing schools. So you can choose to do that. You may not. You don't have to.
Them stupid. You're talking to an anarchist here, bud. Of course, I'm going to call them government schools.
Government schools.
The dirty government schools. So what happens is, the father and mother immigrate over. I have legitimately the only bad illegal immigrant I've ever met is the one that's involved in a gang. Every illegal immigrant I have ever met living in LA that wasn't involved in a gang is literally probably the hardest working people I've ever met ever. Yeah. They do literally whatever it takes to put food on the table and take care of their families. They do shitty jobs, right? They do really shitty jobs. And what happens is their kids go to a government school where a government teacher tells them that, hey, you want to know why your parents are working so hard and doing these terrible, shitty jobs? The answer is not because they're trying to provide a better life for you, and this was better than living in the cartel hellhole that is Mexico. No, the answer is because America is racist and it's white supremacist, and your parents are going to be working those shitty jobs because white people do not want you working the good jobs, and it creates this hatred. It creates they get your kids early. That's why the government wants your children for 8 hours a day from the age of 5 to 18. And these teachers get their hands on the kids and they start convincing the kids that no, their parents aren't working their ass off to provide a better life. Their parents are working their ass off because America's racist. And next thing you know, you got these kids that are turning into citizens and going out and just voting straight line Democrat because they just do not actually know what's going on. And they've been told so much different.
I'm curious, I hesitate to use the word conservatives, but how do less government proponents combat that sort of thing? Like, I actually don't know. Like on the ground,
use their language against them, right?
Well,
you use their language against them. So let me explain why that is.
Okay.
So what is the number one word that the left, specifically the Marxist left, just loves to use so much, and they know that it's very confusing to everyone, and they don't know what it really means?
Equity.
Equity. You want to know what the conservative movement should be doing right now? Blasting that word everywhere, using equity in terms of the voucher program. You want equity? Here's your voucher program where every child in your state will be worth the same amount of money for their ticket, regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of gender.
That's a good idea.
Equity.
That is good.
This is the most equitable possible thing you can possibly do.
Is that a Kevin original, or did you pick that up from somebody?
I connected those dots a long time ago. I spent way too much time thinking, but it comes from my mindset of you have to be able to use their arguments against them. If they're going to advocate for this stuff, there are going to be, nothing is ever 100% wrong. There's going to be a situation where the equitable option is actually probably the best option. And that happens to be in school choice. And they use this word so much. I keep telling conservatives and the Democrats, kids that will listen to me, what you need to start doing if you truly care about equity. Why is it that I'll ask them, what do you think about school choice or the voucher program? And they'll be like, I don't want kids getting money to go to private school, or like, I don't want money going to, religious institutions, or they'll come up with any myriad of crap answers that actually do not pertain to the issue. And so I start describing to them the absolute crisis that is public school, the government school system. But what I always end up on is like, look, do you think that a single black mother should have the same opportunity to send her child to whatever school she wants to, a private school, as the white suburban family?
I'm mostly listening, and I'm now thinking in my head of like, I'm going to text a couple state senators and state assemblymen after this and say, hey, you want to introduce a bill called the Childhood Equity Act? And all it is promotes school vouchers, because the California Democrats will not take the bait. They'll vote against it. But then we get to run against them in the next cycle saying, this Democrat voted against the Childhood Equity Act.
And all you have to do is go to the shit school districts. You just go to the shit school districts and you tell them, hey, we are trying to fund charter and private schools in your neighborhood. We believe you are getting underserved. And the Democrats decided you did not have the same right to send your child to a private school as a white family. Use it against them.
It's also there's a poll that came out. The whole mask mandate thing in schools has made Democrats embrace school choice, a long-held Republican value. In that, well, this school doesn't make kids wear masks, so I don't want to send them to this government school. I would like to send them to this government school, which is, I don't know, just kind of funny.
I think it's great there. Because like the problem, and the Democrats know what the problem is with the public school system, but the problem with the public school system is actually to their benefit. So their problem would be competition. That is their biggest issue, is competition. As we all know, competition is the greatest driver for improvement and production. So
no, it is government regulation. Government regulation is the best way to get people to work harder.
What's the best is when the bureaucrat's sitting in their office 13,000 miles away from where you live and is making about 1,200 economic decisions a day to try to figure out. It's like, guys, come on. So just a brief aside, because we're going to definitely keep going on about schools, because I've written so many papers about the public school system or the government school system and everything like that. But as a brief aside, right? Dang it, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
What did we just say?
I don't remember.
Oh, my ADHD just absolutely murders me. I'll just keep going.
You said the private sector is way better at determining what people should do or how they should do it.
Oh yeah. So based on like the bureaucracy. So I was going to get into anarchism. Here we go. So I was a socialist, man. In 2016, I was a total Bernie bro. Like I was all about it, and I was in the military doing this. Which, oh, by the way, we'll get to that later. Okay. It was because it's weird that I was a socialist in the military, but so I was a full blown socialist, and then 2016 came along. Donald Trump won, and I did the one thing that the corporate media doesn't want you to do. Right when they called Trump Hitler, I said, "But is he though?" And so that started this whole spiral, because I was like, so where are the trains taking Mexicans and Jews off to the camps? No, they don't exist. Got it. Wait a second. So if he's not Hitler, what else are they lying to me about? And
sorry, I feel like we skipped over a huge part. How did you become a Bernie bro? Because I've been pretty attuned to the political world for a long time, so I never had that come to Jesus moment, or like I was a this and now I was this. I've always, since I was a kid, thought the government was bad at doing things, so I want them to do less things. Yeah. Everything the government does, they're bad at. So why should we have them do more things?
Well,
anyway,
so I reached a phase in my life around 2010 where my political stance became, "Screw you, Dad. I disagree." So, being a conservative,
that's what it was.
Well, it started me down the path, and so I kept going down the path. But the thing is I joined the Army not long after that, and the thing is that the military, I was in intelligence. I'm an Arabic linguist. I was a cryptologic linguist. I was in Intel, and what I have found is that there are a lot of people on the left in intelligence, a lot of people on the left. In fact, the most of them are on the left. Now, when you're talking the combat arms, like your scouts, your infantry, your artillery, those guys, blanket conservatives, basically. But when you're talking your Intel, very, very, very heavy lean to the left. And so I wasn't having very many of my ideas challenged at all, ever. In fact, I was having them promulgated. And anytime I would say something counter, they'd be like, hey, shut the fuck up, Private. We don't want to hear what you have to say. Okay, sorry. So, it's actually pretty crazy just how much, how many people there are on the left. And so 2016 rolls around, and I had a really good friend in the military, and he was a socialist too. And so we were big old Bernie bros. And then,
sorry. When you say you were what does that mean? Like, do you know what that meant?
Yes. So I was a Democratic Socialist of America kind of guy. So I didn't know what socialism was really. I just thought it meant I get to have nice things that other people produce. That's what I thought it was.
Okay.
And that's what a lot of people that age think socialism actually is. And so I was a DSA guy. And so I was like all about, I was kind of a contrarian too, but at the same time, I had always in my mind, I just really, really, really hate disingenuous people. And I can spot it from a mile away. And so naturally, I was gonna say, watching politics, man. Yeah, I was I hate these people.
Here's a hot take when it comes to disingenuous. My favorite politician, and this is going to get, eventually, I say this all over the place, and eventually it's going to get taken out of context, and eventually I'm going to take heat for it, but I'm going to continue saying it. Because I'm going to explain why afterward, but eventually somebody's going to cut this part off and then just say that. Anyways, my favorite
watch this.
My favorite politician is AOC. She's wrong about everything. She is my favorite politician because she's actually... So all right. So, okay. I didn't know we were going to go to that. Jeez, dude. This is an intellectual discussion.
I mean,
she's not the ugliest woman I've ever seen. No. But she's wrong about everything, but dang, does she believe it? And again, that has its own ramifications. The intellectual properties there.
Pause on. I don't know if what economics degree, what university do you think puts out an economics degree that actually backs the idea that Marxism is good, that socialism is good?
I don't know.
She graduated with an economics degree from Boston College.
Okay. And you're currently going to school. I'll tell you what, I was a business administration major. I am supposed to be able to be on the board of a Fortune 500 company. I could not tell you a thing that I learned in business school at my ripe old age of 30.
So I would business school isn't actual school, though. Economics is in the liberal arts program, which is actual school.
Well, so I'm saying, I wouldn't put that on her college. I think she actually believes that. I don't think the college was going to teach her anything different. But the thing is, she actually believes it. When it comes to disingenuous politicians, this for the same reason that Donald Trump was so popular, why Bernie Sanders was so popular, and why AOC is so popular, because they actually believe the things that they're saying. You've got McConnell, who I agree with a ton, but will also say things that he clearly doesn't think. Same thing with Schumer, who I disagree with on everything, will say things that clearly he doesn't actually think.
And then they'll go have beers together afterwards.
Dude, I've got some stories about that. Oh my gosh. Some of your I probably shouldn't say.
You don't have to use any identifying qualities whatsoever, dude, but I know it happens.
There was an insanely popular politician that everybody will know who was... I'm going to give it away.
No, don't. Then don't do it. Then I don't want you to get in trouble, man.
I'm not going to get in trouble. I just don't want to, nobody's going to come down with me. I just don't want to be that guy who divulges private.
You just say one guy talking to another guy, and I'll assume they're very well-known politicians.
Very well-known politicians who on TV hated each other a lot, texted each other back and forth when they would go on their respective news outlets and say, "Hey, man, like disagreed with what you said, but you looked great up there." And that's all.
Which is what I'm going to get back to with AOC.
Yeah,
it's malicious because like either she's stupid and believes it, or she's malicious and knows that it's a really good way to win, and that's is possible. Where I think it comes in, because that's the point I'm making about she went to a top tier university and graduated specifically with an economics degree. Yeah, and she graduated with an economics degree. I'm sorry, like that's one of the few parts of the liberal arts program that does not go Marxist, because Marxist economics fail miserably. Hence why cultural Marxism.
Ask Robert Reich about that.
Well, no, it fails miserably. Hence why cultural Marxism became the next tool, because if you can't control an economy using it, it actually works pretty well on the culture. It works on a sociological level. But I cannot think of the actual economics program that someone can graduate from and truly believe socialism is going to work, except for the fact that, you know, it's a liberal arts program. Everything is permeated. So that's why I just doubt. I look for the signs if she's being disingenuous or not, because like sometimes I think she's being really malicious and disingenuous, and sometimes I'm like, you are the dumbest person I've ever heard.
The one time that I think she actually showed some sort of cynicism was when the House, was it last week, was voting to replenish the Iron Dome in Israel, and I don't know if you saw this. She voted no, and then changed her vote to present, and was like crying afterward because she like needed to change her vote to present. And then people were like, "Well, why did she do that?" Well, because clearly she's running for Senate, and you can't piss off the Jews in New York.
Oh my God, that is like the worst possible demographic to piss off there. Oh my gosh.
That's the glimmer of cynicism. Maybe she's becoming a true Beltway insider.
Well, she's displayed to her that she's a Beltway insider, especially with where she lives over there. Especially like she doesn't actually hold to any of her principles whatsoever, and she caves constantly. I was in DC. Geez, when was this? 2019, and I was at a friend's apartment, and this friend was like, "Hey, AOC lives 3 doors down from me," and I was like, "What?" And so I don't know. I want to throw ragers. I feel like she throws ragers.
I don't know. I didn't want to seem fanboyish at all and go like, dude, like let's go hang out. But I would love to go on a double date with AOC. Just to I don't know. I think she's a fascinating person. Again, wrong about everything.
She went from bartender to U.S. Congresswoman, and apparently this country is disgustingly and horribly racist. And so.
That's probably enough AOC chatter.
Oh yeah, Lori reminded us of the fake tears at Trump's border. That too was also pretty fun. But it's that thing though. It's like there seems to be a malicious intent, or clearly politics is closer to Veep than it is House of Cards, but there's a little bit of truth in both. Politics is a bunch of people thinking that they're Frank from House of Cards when they're really Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Veep, and it's all of them because they're all idiots. Really, it's a lot of idiots as far as like they think they're really smart, and they try to put these really like super smart plans into play. Like, I'm going to get this policy through and do this, and this, and really it's just like it's an absolute dumpster fire of ideas. And at the end of the day, they talk behind scenes, and they're talking about how easy it is to manipulate the American people. And when the Democrats go to push a policy through, one of them gets on the phone with one of the reporters over at CNN and is like, "Hey, we need you to put it this way," kind of deal. And it's like, we know they're all working together, but like the maliciousness seems to have gotten a lot worse.
So, did you ever watch The Swamp, the documentary on HBO?
I have not. No.
It's actually super. It's super telling of how like it's Gates.
Gross.
What's the dude's name in San Francisco? No. He's a congressman, Indian guy. Like doesn't matter.
I know who you're talking about. Korana. Yeah. It's Ro Khanna. There we go.
Yeah. He was, it was kind of like following them in like this bipartisan bill and it was actually super interesting because it kind of like delved into what it's actually like in the halls of Congress. Again, I think you're right. Like I love the Ben Shapiro comparison of like, look, it's not House of Cards or West Wing, it's Veep.
Yeah.
Because that documentary to me was, pretty telling of like, yeah, not a lot of people know what's happening at all at any point.
No.
So yeah, I don't know.
Everybody's putting plans against everybody else, and they're all trying to like wheel and deal with everyone else and make these backroom deals. And it's like, can you guys just realize, hey, if I want to keep my job, the best way to do it is to, make this a little bit better. It's so terrible now that if I'm just sitting in this seat when it gets better, whether or not I contribute to it, I'm getting reelected. Like, it's so bad now that if they just said, hey, let's kind of drop the politics for a little bit, let's like put some stability in there so that we can get along a nice track and get back to this in like 10, 15 years, because what they're doing now is absolutely catastrophic for our economy, for our society, for everything about our country right now. Like, we're on the brink of balkanization, and they're arguing over the freaking debt ceiling right now. So,
yeah. You know what irritates me is when bad decisions end up working out.
Yeah. Oh,
the United States government, the federal government as a whole, is digging us into a massive crater that is not going to turn out well by their own decision. On the other hand, the country that we would lose to if we were to implode, China, also has its own crazy things that they have to deal with. It would be so disheartening to see all the poor decisions from Washington, D.C. end up turning out fine because China implodes. Now, again, I want the United States to prevail over China in all cases at all times. But when it does happen because China implodes because of their geographical issues, their population issues, their human rights, whatever issues that's going to befall China, which I think will actually happen.
It's going to be soon.
End up making the crazy amount of debt that we'd accrued kind of be okay because other countries are going to invest in the United States. It's going to make me think...
Well, India's next after China. India's next after, because the thing is that India is actually probably going to be the sustainable super country, because as opposed to China, who is building up on the back of the CCP, whose economic policies are absolutely just what we want to do. If we're talking bubbles, the bubble of 2008 had about $1 trillion to $2 trillion of really bad debt, right? They are currently sitting at about 8, 9, 10 trillion worth of that.
How do we know it's bad debt?
Oh, it's the same kind of subprime mortgages. They have an absolute housing crisis going on over there because they have an abundance of boys. They have about 50 million more men than women. Most of their country is old. They are currently.
I don't know anything about this. So good.
Yeah, China is probably closer to collapse than we are, and that's crazy.
Which is a good thing. I want that. I want the United States to prevail. I'm saying that I'm worried about that clip being taken out of context. All I'm saying is it's disheartening when bad decisions turn out to be okay because.
Here's the thing, though, is that China only has they have less than 5 trillion of our debt, of our 28 trillion. So even if they collapse, there's a lot of countries and private businesses that we're still going to be owing a lot of money to, and it's not as if.
What's the term called with because we'd owe debt to Japan. I think the Japan holds most of our debt. Yeah. And then Brazil has a ton, but also the Fed is buying bonds from the Treasury. Yeah. Issued by the Fed. Quantitative easing. That's the term. Yeah. So there's also that. So I don't know what you were talking about, but keep that in mind too.
They're making up money. They're just making up money out of thin air, which is, again,
good time.
Anarchism right here. This is why the state is an.
Are you a Bitcoiner? Are you all about the Bitcoin?
I'm all about crypto. I'm all about crypto with a purpose because crypto's a whole other thing. But but what crypto is that is so wonderful. It's the one thing. There are 3 things a government must control to maintain stability: education, currency. And violence. If they have a monopoly on those 3 things, the government is going to stay in control. School choice threatens the monopoly of education. Second Amendment threatens the monopoly of violence. And the thing is that crypto threatens the monopoly on currency. And that they have such a vice grip on that, because as we see in today's day and age, war is basically posturing unless you're totally just beaten up on a redheaded stepchild. And so at this point, the currency is the most important asset that the United States is currently trying to control, because it gives them almost unlimited power to do whatever they want at this moment, because they can print so much. What crypto represents and why it's such a threat is an alternative form. I do not want your US dollars. I am only accepting trade in crypto. And so the government is doing everything it can to stymie that market, because once they lose that monopoly on that currency in crypto, because like the crypto coins I have, if the US dollar fails, I have enough money in my cryptocurrency that it's like, okay, well, I'll be able to keep up with it, because once we hit Weimar Republic status and we start having to burn our cash, it's I'm going to have this crypto. And the other part about it is it's completely untraceable because of the blockchain. So the government is going to do whatever it can to maintain that monopoly on crypto, because what the Fed has allowed for, and what's so gross about the Fed and why we need to get rid of the Fed, is the Fed has basically turned itself into a blank check for the United States. The Fed can do whatever it wants, and there is the whole bailout program. There should never be a bailout. All those banks should have failed, because you know what? Maybe they would have learned their lesson on giving out bad debt and actually started to operate like banks rather than casinos, if you will. Yeah. So it comes down to the fact that our government is going to be doing everything in its power to destroy levels of competition like that. And Frick, how did we get onto this one?
Do you think? Oh, well, sorry to just tug on that thread a little bit more. Do you think the populace understands the potential of cryptocurrency in order to get it to a? Do you think their ability to understand the potential is enough to get it to a critical mass to become the widely used thing that it needs to be if it were to dethrone the US dollar? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Because again, like right now, if the world was just your Bitcoiners and your crypto heads, they would be fine. They'd be able to operate within their own cryptocurrency world. But obviously, the percentage of those people is like, I don't know, less than 1% of the US population.
Yeah.
Like, in order to get to a critical mass, you got to have, I don't know, at least 20% of the population being fully in on this in order for the snowball effect to start happening. So do you think it's possible for people to have a good enough understanding of the way, one, crypto works, two, the blockchain works, and three, why it's beneficial as opposed to the Federal Reserve?
They don't have to understand that. What they have to understand is make an account on an app, put money into app, use money to buy coin whose price goes up. And then from that app, you can do transactions basically like you can on your phone, and just do that.
But you don't get enough people to buy in.
Like, what's going to get people to buy in is going to be the fact that when people start talking about not only is Bitcoin at 50 grand, but Ethereum sitting at 40 grand, you got Cardano sitting. When that starts happening, people pay attention to where the money's going.
I've got Strike on my phone, but I've never used it. Like, I've got a crypto wallet. I've got Coinbase, which again is the super novice crypto thing. Coinbase. But I don't know, until I think we're pretty far off from people being able to understand it enough to put their confidence in it.
Well,
because
and anybody
can put $100 into a crypto wallet. Maybe not even that. Maybe $10. Anybody can do $10. But when you're talking about, all right, I'm going to put 100 grand into crypto, and it's that volatile, then that's a tough sale.
So crypto, for those who are wondering in the market, what cryptocurrency is a form of a digital alternative to dollars, right? It's a way to make transactions. It's basically a digital coin. That's what it comes out. They're called crypto coins and stuff like that. And what makes them special is that there's a finite amount of them. And for some of them, they come with special features. So for example, on Cardano, having Cardano coin connected to the blockchain actually gives you access to a lot of what is called. Let me explain the blockchain. The blockchain is just basically everybody's computer turns into a server. and everything is encrypted. It's way more
See,
complex
here's the
than
thing,
that. But
you got to explain what a server is now too. Like, is this what I'm talking? This is why I love Bitcoiners, and I have a lot of Bitcoin friends. But when they go down, like explaining this to people like my parents, it's just like a server. What in the heck is and I'm a server? No. Your computer at home can be a server. The government is tapping into my computers. Like that's where it all goes to.
I explained it like this. It turns your computer into a virtual bank. Like it makes your computer the virtual piggy bank.
What if my computer dies?
Well, it stays on there forever, bud. Such as the guy who lost a flash drive that had like 10,000 Bitcoin on it back in 2011, and it would have been worth hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars now. Like, legitimately, people were diving through when they found out about it. They went diving through the entire landfill trying to find this little flash drive.
See, I like Ragnar Adventures comments, or just buy gold and silver. I'm a big gold and silver type person. I'm diversified, but
precious metals are good.
Precious metals seem to, especially silver, because silver actually has practical uses.
Gold is the best conductor there is.
Oh, all right. Well, then gold has practical uses too.
Oh, did we tell me? Yeah. My internet's doing its thing.
That's okay.
Okay. There we go.
If you're going to freeze like that, I'm just going to go on a rant. What do you want me to rant about? What's the tirade for today?
Go on about the gold there, because no, it is, precious metals are a very good investment, and they do have very practical.
Oh, you're cutting in and out. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh my gosh.
It's okay. You're good.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good. My router sometimes decides to be dumb. So
what age do you stop going by Kevin the Kid? Dogecoin! Woo, Tracy! Do you reach a threshold of like, 'cause you're closing in on 30 pretty hard, I think. What are you, 27?
I just had my 25th birthday. Thank you very much.
Okay. Cool. I just celebrated the 13th anniversary of my 17-year-old birthday.
You are at that 30-year-old threshold, man. Jesus.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm 30.
I'm sorry, man. God, you're old. I'm never gonna get there.
Everything is downhill from here,
dude. Like, you're tumbling at this point. You hit 31, and next thing you're 45, and you're just like, where did my knees go?
My knees left a long time ago. We don't have to worry about that.
So anyways, the precious metals. What matters is getting your money out of the US dollar, turning your money into something that is not the US dollar, something that will have value as the US dollar's value plummets. And it is a good point. Like, how are we going to be sure that we're going to have enough people that want to adopt this? Are we going to be sure? It's all we can really do is talk about it. The amount of people that are buying into it is going up, especially with stuff like Robinhood coming out, which, oh, by the way, if you are buying your crypto on Robinhood, I would suggest moving that over, because you actually don't have ownership of the coins if you use Robinhood.
Interesting.
Yes. So they are, what matters is, to get back to it, was the monopolies. And, now I'm going to bring it back to education as well, which is why, if you can control the narrative. Murray Rothbard mentioned the first line of his book, or his essay, Anatomy of the State, talks about the fact that saying that we are the government, referring to the government as we, is just the worst thing you can possibly do. The example he uses is, he says, if you say we are the government, then the Jews of Nazi Germany, in fact, kill themselves. Because if we are the government and the government's actions are our own, then if I am killed by the government, that is actually a suicidal action. We are not, in fact, the government, which is why I always specify the government. I always designate that it's actually the government's actions. It's not our actions. It's the government's actions doing stuff, because, you go through school and you are taught, but you are basically given the assumption that the government is legitimate. Just there. It is legitimate. Like, there is no questioning it.
Why would the government lie?
You see, the government just has your best interest at heart at all times.
I believe that wholeheartedly. Everything the government does is definitely in my own best interest, and they will never do me any wrong.
They'll never do you any wrong unless they like catch you speeding, or like maybe you grew a plant they don't like, or maybe you got a gun that they think might be able to fight back against you, or maybe you're just saying you don't like the government. We did see that you and I are now domestic terrorists, of course, like you and I being.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
what was it? If you have any hesitation of the vacations.
Yes, if you don't want to take a vacation, you are a COVID guy.
Well, no, not even don't want to. If you have any hesitation, I think is what the thing actually said.
Oh yeah, it's your patriotic duty. Oh, by the way, I know that if I told a girl that having sex with me was her patriotic duty, and she said yes because of that, that's probably going to be rape if I'm coercing her like that. But when the government does it, fine.
I'm not going to engage in this very dangerous topic.
Well, no, it's about consent, man. No, it's all about consent. And it comes down to what can you consent to? And that's what Murray Rothbard gets to. What constitutes consent? What are you consenting to the government? I am not consenting to taxes. I am not consenting to people telling me what guns I can have. I am not consenting to people telling me what kind of, plants I'm allowed to grow in my garden. Why is it that consent only matters in the situation of sex, but not anything else? Why is it that you'll hear everybody, Me Too, talk about consent, but as soon as I go, well, I don't consent to having a vacation in my arm, they're like, you don't get to consent. It's like, I know that if a girl told me the reason she had sex with a dude was because she felt pressured, she felt like she would have her rights taken away, she felt like she would get in trouble, or she wouldn't be able to do anything. That would be considered coercion. But yet if somebody gets the vacation for that reason, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter, right? It's consensual at that point.
I've never thought about it that way. The only thing I would caution against is diminishing the terribleness of non-consensual intercourse, because I think
what makes it terrible? The fact that it wasn't consensual.
Yeah, the fact that it wasn't. No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, and I think it's an interesting point. If at any point it diminishes the severity of how bad that is because you're equating it to taxes or vacations, that's where I'd be like, maybe not.
Well, YouTube, I was raped when I was 6 and I was raped when I was 21. So I get to say this. I get to make these equations because apparently that's what qualifies one to be able to say that. My consent wasn't found there. My consent was not found in what this is. And sorry, tough conversations. But
yeah, jeez.
But people don't consider this. Why is it that consent only matters in that one situation? Why is it that when I don't, it's what makes that so bad is the fact that it happened without consent and the non-consent was displayed the whole time. When people are getting pulled over, if I have a cop break into my house for no other reason than maybe I have a plant, I'm not consenting to that. And if I fight back, I will get killed. I will die. My non-consent will get me killed. So why is it that this is what I get to? You've never really heard it that way because at the end of the day, the government has you go through government education. You've never heard of Murray Rothbard. Well, you might have heard of him. You've probably never read him, or Ludwig von Mises, or Hayek, or Benjamin Tucker, or any of the actual anarchist minds. Because what do anarchists do? They give really damn good arguments against the legitimacy of a government, of a state. They blow holes in it right out the gates. And you're never going to hear that because if you start teaching kids this, kids are going to grow up like, wait a second, I thought my consent mattered.
Who's the other economist? Not Mises.
You have John Maynard Keynes, you had Milton Friedman, you had
Friedman.
Yeah,
Friedman, what's his quote? Reflexively reject all taxes, all tax increase or whatever.
Yes.
I think we need to not necessarily alter that quote, but add to it. Also, reflexively deflect against all claims of emergency. I think that needs to be added to the thing because I get the taxes thing and that makes total sense. But I think up until recently, we didn't understand the severity of quote unquote emergencies and the power that people can wield if they claim that such a situation is in fact an emergency.
Well, if it's an emergency, people respond usually pretty well to emergencies, and as in people will respond to the emergency. People don't just let emergencies happen and just sit there and do nothing. Most of the time, people don't need the government telling them it's an emergency for people to understand it's an emergency, and people will consent to as much government aid as they want. People will consent to the government coming in and helping them. But when you're declaring an emergency to, maybe you're using an emergency youth authorization to get vacations approved and stuff like that, or you're using emergencies always present really great opportunities to seize power. Never let a good tragedy go to waste, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. What was there's a quote that I heard today from, what's the guy's name who, it's spelled like campus, but it's like Compo or something like that.
Luis Compo.
Yeah. He said something along the lines of like, the welfare of a society is the tyrant's reasoning, or something like that. Always this
for the greater good.
Alibi of tyrants. Yeah.
Yes, for the greater good. The amount of things that can be justified if your goal is to quote unquote save a life. It's like, wow, if that's, what I'll do to save a life, I'll save someone. I'll save a life. But if you're trying to tell me what that, we need to do, lockdowns and stuff like that to save people's lives, my question is going to be, okay, so why? What data?
I have a hilarious reel on my hilarious Instagram account where it's like somebody said, like, make sure you wear your sunglasses this weekend to protect others from the sun. And I looked at it today. It's got like 40,000 plays, which I know to some big wigs that's not exciting at all.
But I think there's a lot of power at stake here, man. There's a lot of power at stake. There's a lot of control at stake. And the thing is that politicians get into office, and if you're on the major ticket of one of the parties, you think you're going to be there forever. So you think consolidating your power is going to give it to you forever. And that's our fault, in all honesty. That's our fault as Americans for not doing our due diligence when we're going into elections, figuring out, hey, is this guy gross or not? Or taking the mindset of everybody's representative sucks but mine. It's well, too bad. Yours is the only one you can vote for. So do me a favor and get rid of yours, and I'll do you a favor and get rid of mine. How about that? How about we go about that idea? But, these guys end up being in office forever. So when they consolidate power, they truly think it's going to be theirs. And it's really hard for a lot of people to resist. And especially in our current situation.
Because people want a king. Human nature is that people want a king. For some reason, I don't know why. It's never turned out well for the greater society. But people just like, I guess, being told what to do, which is so odd.
Yeah, no, it's people, like, I've heard people say that people, want to be led. No, I think that a lot of it is also people want to feel safe. And traditionally, there's following a single person following a singular leader was the most efficient way, because if you can have a unified message on safety, it was a lot better that way. But we're in a position as a society where safety itself is not necessarily as much of a concern. So because safety itself isn't the concern, other things can start to take precedence, like, consolidation of power or economic stuff. And so you have these politicians that end up maintaining their power, and they're consolidating it and taking our rights away, because to them it's like, hey, this is mine and I can keep you safe, and I'm smarter than you and I'm better than you at this, so just let me do more and more and more. And it takes away our sovereignty and our liberties with it. And so many people desire to be safe still, that when you have a situation like we're experiencing right now with the what do I want to call this one, the cocaine, because YouTube's not going to censor that. When you got the Cocos and coming around, and you can actually drum up fear, people won't even do research, man. People, if they're afraid, if you can get them afraid, they won't even question you. Which, like, you've noticed that, right?
I don't want to say. So when I'm doing political stuff, I try to stay away from, like, scaring people into vote. I probably should get over that and just join the herd and scare people to the polls. But I don't
need to do that.
I like firing people up as opposed to fearing them out. But yeah, but you're right. People get so scared all the time that they end up actually taking some sort of action, whether that be at the polls or getting involved in some sort of political activism group. I don't know.
They don't even try to think for themselves at a point, though, because if you actually look at the data coming out, Bill Maher had it on his show very recently from a poll that came out in March or May, where basically 50 or 70% of people that say they're Democrat think that the COCO's hospitalization rates. I don't know how I'm supposed to say this without getting in trouble. 70%. I shouldn't get in trouble. That's the thing, is all I'm relaying is actual facts, right? 70% thought it was at minimum 10 times as likely than it actually is, with 41% of them thinking that it was over between 50 and 100% chance of hospitalization if you get it.
Yep.
And the reality is it's 1 to 2%. But it is the fact that they think it's so high. And the Republicans and the independents were scary high too in that regard. But here's the thing is, what is the message coming out of the media? Republicans, conservatives, people that don't want the vacations are the ones that are the problem. They're misinformed. They don't have the information. Yet the data suggests, in fact, they're significantly more informed. And the fear mongering has worked thus far, but I think it's starting to fail.
That polling is pretty similar of polling that they did late last year regarding Democrats and police brutality. I think it was like 60%. I could be botching up these numbers, but a really high percentage of Democrats think that like 1,000 to 1,500 unarmed black men are gunned down every year by the cops. Yeah, and it turned out to be like 15.
Exactly.
Pretty substantial difference there.
Yeah, no, and what's crazy is when I talk to a person that believes that on a college campus, I'm the one that's called misinformed. And remember, they're also then telling me, stop doing your own research. Well, yeah, I guess you should not do your research because they want you to be fear-mongered. This thing, they are using a tragedy that they have to hide the information on. They're using a crisis that they actually legitimately cannot. They have to actively discourage people from doing any form of looking into it because the actual statistics suggest less than 2% hospitalization rate. And if you are under the age of 40, you're sitting at about a 99.98% survival rate. Again, these are all CDC backed numbers, right? These are this is directly from the CDC, and they don't want people looking into it because then they say make sure to remind those conservatives that they're idiots, that they shouldn't be listening to their sources, and that
which is a great way to convince you of their ideas, right? Calling you an idiot is a great way to convince you to be on their side.
Yeah, 100%. Like best way.
What is it like in Colorado? How long have you been in Colorado?
I have been here now 7 years. I'm going on 7 years, dude.
Okay, so you've been there, so you were there through the whole COVID thing. Like, I'm curious, what was your response? So I think, let's see, the world shut down in like March of last year.
March 17th,
and then like May, like middle of May last year, I think my wife and I were just like, all right, we're done. Like, not like in a malcontent way of just like mad. I mean, we're getting mad now, but we're just kind of like, all right, well, I did the whole lockdown thing, did all that, so we're just going to keep doing what and we've just been living life nonchalantly, however we want. Like, this is like, and up until this point, nobody's been mad at anybody. Like, I haven't been like mad at my neighbors who want to wear masks outside while they're like mowing their lawn by 100 yards away from the next closest person. Like, if they want to do that, fine. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. I was in Nashville 2 weekends ago on Broadway, and there were thousands of people crammed into a very small place. Nobody was maskless. Nobody was checking vaccines. It was just like, I just, no, thank you. Like, that's the attitude I've had. So like, what is are you like more combative of like, no, I'm like not doing this, or like, what's going on over there?
So like, personally, I am always going to stand against whatever the government tells me to do because screw the government. But so when it first started to go down, my whole approach to it was like, when it first started coming out, I was like, all right, let's see some data. We don't know what's coming out. I do know some pretty scary things usually are coming out of China. So maybe a little bit of caution here is good. I was like, I'd rather not do 2 weeks to stop the spread kind of deal. But if everyone's going to do it, Let's do it.
And also, we have no idea what this thing is at the beginning, right? Like everybody was concerned. We went to a wedding. Well, I was in Nashville. Like we were on like literally one of the last planes out of Nashville before they shut down airlines, flying back to California. But at the time, I was kind of like, my cousin was getting married. Like that next weekend, we're like, should we go to this thing? Like, we don't really like, we didn't know either. And then, 2 months into it, you're like, oh, okay, so it's fine. I didn't really have anything to worry about.
Yeah, no, it was crazy because like you started to realize very quick, oh wait, this thing's probably not that bad. So by here in Colorado, so I'm like I said, I'm all about criticizing politicians, and we have a very not loved Democrat governor. The Republicans in our state hate him, Jared Polis.
Who was your last governor?
Hickenlooper.
Hickenlooper.
Chicken pooper.
He's the guy who went to the X-rated movie with his mom.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Funny story. So I worked for canvassing for Cory Gardner last year. I was one of the people in charge of it for Northern Colorado, and I would go to people's doors and like I had this whole thing. I would talk to them. I'd always ask them, "Hey, do you hate corrupt politicians?" They'd be like, "Yeah, I hate them." I'd be like, "Cool, you're voting for Cory Gardner? Fuck him, he's a Republican." I'm like, dude, Hickenlooper was literally found guilty of like 12 counts of corruption. Like, yeah,
it's funny.
Like you won't even like. You just told me you hate corrupt politicians.
You go out and canvass then. So like you're like, because a lot of people, here's what I've learned. A lot of people like talking about politics, but not a lot of people are actually involved and engaged. I think that's the biggest, it's one of the most interesting things. I think a lot of people like yelling and screaming and typing mean things on Facebook and YouTube. But I could count on one hand how many people I know that actually volunteer and go canvass. I don't do it necessarily because that's my job. So it'd be difficult to volunteer, do something for free that I work at. Yeah. But for the majority of people that I talk to, you're actually out there canvassing and spending your own time and probably gas money and food and all that sort of stuff to get out there.
I mean, there's a lot of really like motivated people. I've been doing Turning Point on my campus because like I truly believe in directly talking to people. Like the reason I do this is just to put ideas out there. I want people to be able to listen to conversations like this, hear ideas, hear new thoughts, hear new perspectives. Something one of us is going to say in this is going to have some level of impact on someone. And that to me is important because if we are going to do anything about the climate of politics in America, it must be grassroots. The only way we are ever going to unite around the idea that, hey, we have a corrupt elite trying to crush us from the top up, political, economic, and cultural elite that is absolutely trying to maintain a status quo that keeps us down. The only way we can actually do that is at the grassroots level, because they're going to stop any attempt to actually do it from, a popular cultural level. Right. So I love going out on campus. Basically 12 hours a week, every week for the last 3.5 years. I've been standing on my campus's plaza trying to talk to students, man, about politics, about their beliefs and stuff like that, because like that's the way you truly impact stuff. And
so this is just from this is probably not new information to you, but maybe anybody listening to this, it might be. In the actual political consulting game, and I call it a game because that's what it is. It's the most competitive, most aggressive game that unlike business, political campaigns have a definitive winner and loser. Like a business, you can make a sale, you can lose a sale, you can go on and continue doing a thing. You live and die on election night, which makes it super exciting. But anyways, your main drive in a political campaign is not changing people's minds. It's not convincing somebody who believed one thing to another. You, as a former Bernie bro, into a whatever sort of brand of conservatism, whatever you want to call yourself now, is more of an anomaly. Sure, is an anomaly. The objective from a campaign side is to get people who are going to vote for your candidate to show up, and get people who are going to vote for the other candidate to not show up. And that's I'm not saying not show up as in like doing anything untoward or illegal, but like putting hit pieces out, like, oh, I was gonna vote for Kathy, but she's likes, I don't know, dog fighting, and doing stuff like that. So the objective is never to try and convince. Like, we send out mail pieces. If it's a Republican candidate, we never send out mail to Democrat voters who are consistent Democrat voters. It's a waste of money. You're not going to try and flip these people with their ideology. We're trying to get our side to turn out, which is how things become so partisan. But you're on the college campus saying you're actually trying to change hearts and minds. Yeah. I don't know, how successful is that?
Well, it's not necessarily about getting them to just completely change their perspective on the spot in the moment. It's about asking them questions that they themselves are going to have to ponder, right? So the way I put it is, the tree of truth is grown from the seed of doubt. The only way you can ever actually learn and move forward.
Is that also a Kevin original?
Yeah, I believe it is. I've never heard it before.
That's good. You should tweet that. I would retweet you.
Well, shit. I have like 3 tweets. I have like 3 tweets in my entire life. I have like 5 followers. I put barely any attention into my Twitter, but you know what? Maybe I'll put that one out. But it's like, you know, all I'm doing, like with you, for example. So I'm an anarchist. What does that mean? My whole principle is, you do not speak for me. Everything else is just applying that principle. That is what it comes down to. That's why I say consent matters, because to me, consent is the most important thing there is. Capitalism at its core is just a consensual exchange of goods and services. So when the reason why, you know, what I go out there and do what I do, I'm just trying to introduce people to new lines of thought, new questions that they themselves can ponder. And when I would go knocking door to door, I would knock on everybody's door, even the Democrats, because I wanted to know what their thought process was. I wanted to know why they believed what they believed. And maybe I could ask them questions, because I think the best thing you can ever do is just ask people questions and listen to what they have to say.
Of course.
And so, you know, when I was out canvassing, granted, you know, if it was a really hardcore Democrat, I'd be like, next door. Yeah. But if it was someone who had a kind of like, you know, spotty voting history, I would 100%. I'd go up and talk to them and stuff like that. I still remember the one time, legitimately, I knock on this lady's door. It says that she's an independent. And I go, hey, have you heard of Cory Gardner? And she goes, let me get my son. Up from the basement, legitimately. Up from the basement comes this like 275-pound dude. Is like, legitimately, I looked at him, I go, I am simultaneously so blown away. And it's like, why? Because why did she want to get her son?
Because her son like would agree with you, or because you needed to talk some sense into her son?
Oh, he was a super socialist and immediately came to the door and started calling me an evil racist and a horrible person, and that my ideas were such trash. And I was like, but why? Like, can you explain that to me? He goes, he was talking about like he goes, the voter ID is racist. And I'm like, why do you think black people can't get IDs? What makes black people incapable of getting IDs? And he's like,
us minorities are too darn stupid to figure out how to get IDs.
Exactly.
I ain't know how to get an ID. I'm a dumb minority.
Did you see that video where they were like, you know, black people don't have access to IDs, and so I forget who did it, but they walked around.
I think it was Daily Caller.
I think it was you guys. One of your guys just walked around with a microphone. Do you know where the DMV is? Yeah, it's down the street around the corner over there. Like, everybody knew where the DMV was. It's like, stop. But, you know, this is what they do, and this is how they live. But to get back to it is like, so, you know, I loved canvassing because, like, I think it is incredibly important to just go out there and hear what people have to say. No one's really listening to what people on the ground are saying anymore.
Do you know about California ballot harvesting laws?
Oh yeah, dude. That's, you know, California's never going red, and part of it is because of that.
Well, maybe. Depends on
it's going to collapse before it goes red again, unfortunately.
The Republican Party in California, if they were able to figure out their business and not try and tear each other down constantly. I don't know.
Ballot harvesting is cruel.
So, yeah, I guess for people who don't know what ballot harvesting is, I would imagine that a lot of people do, but who don't know what ballot harvesting is, you're allowed to go door to door like Kevin was doing and ask them for their ballot, and they can turn it in. Here's the thing. I don't know how in the weeds I want to get into this. It is so freaking easy to cheat with ballot harvesting. It is unbelievably easy.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, and when I say cheat, I mean legally. Like, my whole thing around voter fraud is that is there voter fraud out there? Absolutely. Is it enough to sway elections? I have no idea. In the presidential election, probably not. In the California election, probably not. You don't have to agree with me. That's just what I think.
Yeah.
Having said that, ballot harvesting is insane that we allow anybody to pick up anybody's ballot. Let me give you a hypothetical. I don't know a single person in California politics who has ever done this. I'm saying that for the record. I don't know this actual person, and this is just a hypothetical. But somebody canvassing a neighborhood, when you're canvassing, you get
all the data.
You get all the data. You get the person's name, you get their registration, you get how old, you get all their data. So if, let's just say you go to a house and husband is a Democrat, wife is a Republican. Say it's some mixed sort of house. Or this happens all throughout the neighborhood. You know who's who. You get the Republican ballot from the wife, and you put it in your left pocket. And then you get the Democrat ballot from the husband, you put it in your right pocket. Now, the law says in California that you have to make a reasonable attempt to get those ballots to the registrar's office.
What is reasonable?
It doesn't say. That's the thing, because they have to account for, what if you get in a car accident and all the ballots blow up in your seat? Should you get charged criminally for that? No, of course not. So the only thing they can say is give some sort of wiggle room for some freak accident to happen and say you have to make a reasonable attempt. Well, here's your reasonable attempt. Let's just say you were working for the Republican Party and you decided, well, I've got all the Republican ballots on this side. Again, you don't know who they voted for, but given their registration, you can have a pretty good idea. You have all the registered Republicans ballots over here. You have all the registered Democrat ballots over here. You turn in all of the Republican ballots to the registrar's office. Then you go to Santa Ana, a well-known homeless epicenter in Southern California, and you give some dude all of the Democrat ballots and $100 and say, you now work for this campaign. Please deliver these to the registrar's office. And all of a sudden, you've made the best attempt that you can make. Now, those ballots can get to the registrar's office at some point. It's possible that they get delivered. It's also possible that Hobo Steve dropped them in the sewer, never to be seen again. All of that would be legal in California, and I'm telling you right now, I do not know anybody who would do that, but I'm saying it's possible.
It's very possible. I was going to say, at what point do the Democratic operatives start hiring crack-addicted homeless people? Just all right, so what you're going to do is you're just going to go rob that guy. Go rob that guy.
Yeah, that's another great point. Yeah, I was attacked in the street. Even if it's you, even if you have, let's just say we're working for the Republican Party, and let's just say you have already turned in your Republican ballots, and you're on your way to go turn in the next one. Who's to say I don't even have to hire anybody. You could just walk down Skid Row in LA with a bunch of ballots in your pockets, and I bet somebody will steal them from you. Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. I think this person that doesn't exist, that I'm not actually talking about, should hear that idea.
Dude, it makes perfect sense. It's hey, dude, let me have what's in your pocket over there. It's yoink, here's a knife, screw off. At the end of the day, somebody could actually do that, and if they're not found out that they paid that crackhead $100 to go rob a dude, you don't even need to pay. You walk down the street of LA, you're gonna get mugged. That's just at this point, yeah. Just what's gonna happen. So you could just have those ballots from whatever party that you don't want turned in your bag, and just go walk around until your bag gets stolen. So you're gonna see the news. Yeah, man was stabbed 17 times last night with 150 ballots in his backpack by 3 homeless people. It's oh well, maybe you should pay him. You don't need to get stabbed. You should just say, let's just take everything I have. But it comes down to there's just so much room, and it doesn't matter what the Republicans do at this point. So many Republicans specifically have fled the state to get away from the policies that at this point, it's how many are even there? It's how long? And so many
Democrats too, which is really makes me upset. I know a bunch of Democrats. One of our good friends' parents moved out of state, and they voted Democrat their entire life. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You can't take a dump and then leave the scene.
Left an upper decker in the
Yeah, what is this crap?
I voted for the homeless. What is it? The Right to Move Act, and I'm out. Enjoy those homeless people that you're not allowed to kick off your front lawn anymore. No, but it's, when it gets back to it, it's like, what is the government freaking good at? I legitimately, that's just a question I ask everybody too. When I ask these kids, I go, okay, what is the government good at? I'm like, because the government that you want to run my healthcare is the same government that has killed 2 million innocent people over in the Middle East and Africa over the last 20 years, is the same government that perpetuated Jim Crow and slavery, is the same one that introduced crack to the black communities and systemically destroyed the nuclear family, is the same government that also freaking robbed those communities of their right to bear arms. It's the same. I can go on about this, and it's like, you also want them to take care of your health care, and you think they're doing well with your education. It's like, dude, I wonder what the breaking point is going to be. At what point, how bad does it have to get before people that are generally voting Democrat say, well, I can't do that this time because they keep fucking up?
I don't know. As long as, one of the things that I think Democrat or political commentators don't talk about enough is the brilliant strategy by Democrats to close the tax base and just have a diminished tax base. Because if you don't pay taxes and you just get money from the government, what incentive do you have for the government to stop spending money? Or just and I use spending money as a catch-all term for just doing things in general, because everything costs money. So at the bottom line, it's government spends money or doesn't spend money. And if you have no skin in the game because you haven't paid income tax, it was like 67% of Americans didn't pay income tax this year or this past 2020, which is insane.
It was unbelievable.
Why would those 67% ever vote for any less government? Because they're not. It doesn't matter. They're not paying for it. They don't care.
Nope.
Yeah,
I think it's only the top 20% actually contribute to the tax system. I think it's only 20% of Americans actually contribute.
And the top 5% pay 80% of the taxes, which is is what it is.
All I hear is that the rich are definitely paying their fair share. When I hear someone who doesn't pay taxes say that tax rich, because here's the thing: is right now, I getting out of the military. I'm on the GI Bill. I have government disability. I will never advocate for increased government spending. I will never argue against the rich because I'm not stupid enough to granted, it's different when it's veterans disability, right? But at the same time,
well, the VA does a phenomenal job, and there's no corruption or waste or misuse or mismanagement at all in the VA.
None whatsoever. It's a
flawless organization.
Actually, it was pretty crazy. That was one of the things that Donald Trump does not get praised enough for, I think. And I think he gets praised too much for a lot of things. But I remember when I was in the Army, and getting into the last couple of years before I got out, you were legitimately worried about the fact that you were about to have to go onto the VA healthcare. You would stay on the government. You would stay in because if I get out, I'm not going to be able to. What he did to revamp the VA system, I at least got significantly better up here. Granted, this is a much less populated area. But programs that he put into place, like the community cares program, where you're allowed to actually, the VA will cover you seeing doctors and care, primary care physicians within your actual community rather than just at the VA. I think it has gotten better, but it is still a bureaucracy. It is still still has its tons of problems. But I'm also not sitting here going, the rich need to be taxed their fair share. Tax the rich. I look at it and go, they get taxed more than goddamn enough. They get taxed so much it's stupid. How about the fact that 49% of our country on a non-COVID year does not pay any form of taxes outside of sales tax? And they're the ones, I think the law should be, if you do not pay taxes, you do not get to vote on tax-related issues. I just truly believe that.
Yeah, I always that's the delineation between regular issues and tax-related issues. Well, everything is eventually a tax-related issue, though. That's the thing. So there have been times where I've gone through periods of life of if you don't pay income tax, you shouldn't be able to vote. I don't think that anymore. Same thing with land ownership or moving the voting age up to 25. I still actually think that'd be a fun idea. Move the voting age up to 25.
You want to know why they don't do that?
Well,
Because
because
that's about the age. Yeah,
the
people stop believing
military,
the bullshit.
Well, there's that. But also, like, I don't think we should be able to have kids enlist in the military and not be able to vote. That seems problematic.
I don't think kids should be able to join the military at 18. I think that there's a reason why. It's because you want the most capable bodies possible getting taking the bullets. Like, it's at the end of the day, that's so. But I think that it would be we would see a much different military if they said, hey, 25 is the age that you get to enlist, because then people would actually have to strongly consider doing it. They'd be a lot more level-headed.
I would be much more likely to join at 18 than at 25. Like, dude, my life has started. Like, I've got, I don't even think you could do that.
Nope.
Not enlist until 25, because I don't know. Your life is moving at that point.
Tell you what they wouldn't be able to do is underpay the hell out of their soldiers. They wouldn't be able to give them, terrible living conditions, ruin their lives, destroy their mental and emotional well-being, abuse them, destroy them. Like, they wouldn't, they would have fewer, so they would have to think a lot harder before they sent them off to die for some bullshit reason. It would have a lot of trail-on effects that, hey, now I'm old enough to actually think about, should we be here? Because when you look at stuff like Afghanistan, that was another big thing that really changed my ideas on it, because, we were lied into both of those wars. We were lied heavily into going after the Taliban, right? Condoleezza Rice recently did a thing with Ben Shapiro where the first words out of her mouth were an actual lie. Like a provable lie. She goes, we went to Afghanistan because the people that planned 9/11 were there. Well, the Hamburg cell is very well known. Muhammad Atta and his men, we know where they were. We know what their movements were. The only reason we knew that they were in Afghanistan at all is because back in about a year before, a couple years before 9/11, two brothers came in that were a part of the planning of it. They were tracked by the CIA. The CIA knew about them. One of the brothers went off back into the country to join one of the cells, but the other brother went back to Afghanistan, and the Taliban did not like the Al-Qaeda, but they tolerated him, right? And so he was just hanging out with some Taliban guys, blabbing about this plan they had to attack the United States. Well, the Taliban sent an ambassador to the United States embassy down in Kabul and said, "Hey, look, we got these crazy guys in our hills right now, and I know that we're beheading women, but we would like you to not come blow our country up."
I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, of course you didn't know anything about that, because it would completely negate us moving into Afghanistan. When you find out, there's a great book. It's by a man named Scott Horton, who is one of the best. He is one of the best people on foreign policy in the world right now. And
interesting.
The Taliban did not want us to come in. They tried desperately to give us Al-Qaeda because they had just gotten over the Soviets. And before that, it was the Brits. Like, Afghanistan has for hundreds of years. And this is not to say the Taliban aren't horrible people. They were doing their own terrible things. But it must be acknowledged, they were actively trying to hand us Al-Qaeda. They actively tried to hand us Osama. And what we did instead is we blew their villages up. We killed their children. We blew their hospitals up. We destroyed their entire nation. And, I asked the question, I go, if you told the 3,000 people that died on 9/11 that we would repay their death with, on average, 666 people dead, of which maybe 4 are going to be actual bad guys, would you accept it? Per person. And I just wonder what they would say. But this is the stuff. It's like, this is what our government does. This is how horrible it is. And you've seen over the last 18 months of COVID, it's like, it doesn't stop. Like, they will continue to expand.
Here's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're making the case that America needs a benevolent king. I would be willing to take up that high honor.
That's such a big mantle there, bro. Are you sure you can handle it?
Yes, I could do it. I totally could do it. Everything would be perfect under me. I can promise the American people that. Vote me king 2032.
King Jobob. That would, what? I think that's one of the best monarch names that I've ever heard in my life.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're gonna listen though. According to CNN, you're gonna have to convince the American South to vote for a brown man because they don't like your kind. Apparently.
I got the name though. I'll sell them on the name.
They'll be going to the voting booth having never seen you, having only heard your voice.
I don't know if I told you about this on our offline chats, but given the name Jobob, which if anybody cares, one grandpa's name is Joe, the other one was Bob. My parents had a disagreement, and the compromise was a hillbilly name. But when I started doing like, I like Ben Shapiro's take on fighting back on the cultural side. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you've seen that Run, Hide, Fight movie. I don't know if you've actually watched it. But
I watched it, yeah.
Yeah, Shapiro put out his own movie. Like, political commentary. Like, imagine 10 years ago if Don Lemon was putting out a rap album. Like, that'd be weird. But like Shapiro is now putting out movies, and I think he's right in the sense that conservatives need to fight on the cultural battlefield now. So I was like joking around with a couple of my buddies, like, dude, my name is Jobob. I should put out country music. Like, a political commentator on the Daily Caller putting out a country song. That's weird.
Hey, Jobob.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked for like a major multimedia international company?
I don't know if you're getting at something here, but
there was always the rumor that you used to work for Disney back in the day.
I don't know what work for means. There were some negotiations back and forth. Clearly, none of it worked out. But I tried to do the whole Disney pop star music thing. When I say I tried, it was a concerted family effort back in the day. But anyways, back to this point here, because I think there are no rules anymore, putting out a country music song next Friday.
Dude,
because why not? Like, there's no rules. And on top of that, we're not to make this like a big announcement forum, but like, because this is not new information, but we're also doing a comedy tour because I also dabbled in stand-up comedy. Dabbled, I mean, I go to open mics quite frequently. So it's a little bit more than dabbling, I guess.
I'll come watch you next time I'm in Cali.
We're setting up dates now. We will probably be, where are you? Are you in Denver? Is that where Colorado is?
Yeah, well, that's our capital, yeah. So I'm in Fort Collins, so I'm about an hour north of Denver.
Got it. All right, maybe we'll put Fort Collins on the map. But we're doing this.
It's a great college town, man. I swear, it's awesome.
I don't know if college town is going to be good for this comedy tour.
Dude, I'll bring you to my freaking campus. I don't care.
It's called the Star Spangled Banter Tour. And we're in the process of getting booked. But anyway, this is all just to say that, like, now you can be a political, at least I think and I hope, you can be a political commentator and then go to Nashville and do a country concert and then do a stand-up comedy gig all in the same day. That's actually my goal. My goal is to do my Daily Caller show that I do every morning, and then go from there to do a stand-up gig, and then go from there to go DJ a nightclub. Like, I think that's like peak success.
Dude, I'll join you for the ride on that one. You head over to Nashville and do it, and I'll be there, man. Because I'm not even joking. I will bring the Star Spangled Banter Tour to Colorado State. I don't give a crap, man.
I'm also not kidding either. Like, that is something that we would love to do. We've got a pretty good apparatus in terms of like our ticket sales and all that sort of stuff, kind of already in the works. But 100-person Fort Collins show sounds pretty doable. And would probably get us all out there.
If we're promoting it, you'd get at least 100 protesters. I'll tell you that much.
Dude, fine. Yeah, that's fine. I'll go have lunch with them. I like protesters.
We had a Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk event that we had about 4,000 people show up for, 4,000 or 5,000 people show up for. And my God, there was like 800 to 1,000 of them were just standing across the street protesting at us. It is so wonderful to see, man. It's just so much fun.
That's funny. I've got some interesting protest stories that I happen to be somewhere in the middle of. Somehow I wound up in a room with me, two other dudes I didn't know, and Milo Yiannopoulos.
Sounds like the start of a really great. Never.
yeah. It sounds like I probably don't keep going on whatever your joke was going to be there. But it was me, two random dudes in Milo Yiannopoulos, and 1,000 people outside across a gate screaming at the room that we were in, and just I don't know. He's obviously being the provocateur that he was. Is, I guess, went out and made them all angry. But I was like, let's go talk to these people. I don't care. I was,
Milo was like one of the first dominoes to fall in the cancel culture, man. He was like one of the first ones to go, and it never really made sense. They called him like a white supremacist. I'm pretty sure like he's married to a black dude. I'm pretty sure.
He's an interesting guy. I'm not going to jump on the defending Milo Yiannopoulos train, but it is kind of interesting how all of that unfolded. I'm
not defending anyone. I just don't think anybody should really be getting canceled over anything, especially when there are things worth it. Some people have some stuff worth quote unquote canceling over, but at the end of the day, how are you ever going to? First and foremost, if what they're saying is so wrong and heinous and terrible, it should be pretty easy to combat. With words. Or it's like, don't you want to know who the horrible people are? This is, as an anarchist, I would like to know who the people that would put a sign that says no black people in their building on so that I don't give them business. I would love to not give those people business. But nowadays.
You say as an anarchist, let's like you're full blown into that territory. Like that's what you identify as. Yeah.
I truly do not. So the state as it exists, which is what a state is the force that has the monopoly of violence in a set of borders. I do not believe in the legitimacy of that. We are all equals. I have the monopoly of violence over myself. You have the monopoly of violence over yourself. That's how it should be. All of our actions should be voluntary. You should not be forced to interact with me, and I should not be forced to interact with you. The misconception about anarchism is that it doesn't have any governments. No, the governments it would have would be very small. They would be very localized. It would be more resemblant of your local governments, right?
Yeah, your city council.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it would allow people the opportunity to actually choose to live in a place that serves their values. And if they don't want to live there, they can live outside of there and have their own value.
Here's if I were to be a quibbler, and I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm just putting it out as opposition. How do you then assemble a protection agency, call it a military if you want, that would fend off or be able to fend off a Russia or a China, which if Putin were able to, if your dreams came to fruition and everything was localized and super small, and Putin saw that, he'd just come in and take over. How does that get stopped?
Well, first and foremost, you have to acknowledge why it is we have enemies around the globe. Most of it is almost exclusively because of our own actions around the globe, right? If you want to know why the 9/11 terrorists, you want to know do you know what what he stated his motivation for why he hated the United States was?
No.
Yeah, it wasn't because people like Beyonce were dancing half naked on stages. It was because of our presence in Saudi Arabia and the fact that we were funding Israel's military actions throughout the area, and that we were going over there and killing Muslims. That's why Osama bin Laden wanted to kill us.
But you don't think like a Xi Jinping or a Vladimir Putin, who is just a power hungry megalomaniac, would just want to come in and just take over just because they can?
Do you not think that every private corporation in America would be incentivized to ensure that the place that allows them to have the most business is also able to have a defense? Except this case, it would be privatized. It would be
so. This is the problem. Is then it doesn't it then okay? So good, right? The military, I guess, then gets privatized by people who have a vested interest in protecting their assets that they have. Okay, who heads that up? Well, it's got to be this guy. And then company B goes, well, why isn't it this guy? Okay, let's have a vote on who heads that up. And then all of a sudden, now you have a governing body that votes on the person or the people that are in charge of protecting, in which case turns into what the founding fathers probably would have wanted the federal government to be. Obviously, it's bloated past that. But how does serving your own self-interest not devolve back into federal government.
Well, because here's the thing is because when you are the monopoly of your own violence, right, you are the one defending yourself, right? I have my own guns. Millions upon millions upon millions of Americans would have their own guns. There is the part of the reason why no one's ever going to try to invade us is not simply because of our military presence, but also the fact that the American people are the most armed populace in the world. The thing is so long as we aren't going out and interfering in literally everybody else's business, what reason would they have to attack us? It's what reason, why would they want to destroy us other than to destroy us? Because you're not going to be able to take over America. You're not just going to be able to take our land. We have the most defensible land mass in the world. On one side of our nation is, you have the entire Sierra Nevadas, and below the Sierra Nevadas, you have the world's most inhospitable desert. And then you go beyond the world's most inhospitable desert and you reach another, multi-thousand mile long mountain chain. At the end of the day, the military question is a tough one because there is no chance at all that I'm going to get my wish. There's no chance that I'm going to get my wish. So in principle, I am an anarchist. And so I take the idea of you do not speak for me and I argue its value when I'm arguing against policy because somebody needs to have the perspective that, hey, this government that you're arguing is so good and great, it's actually an inherent evil. So know that when you're crafting this policy, know that you are robbing people of their rights, know how you are robbing people of their rights. I know practically speaking, we're not going to turn into an anarchist nation. That does not mean that the principles behind my beliefs are not valid. Therefore, it shouldn't be put into the mix because being able to craft government policy that is able to respect people's liberties while at the same time incentivizing the goal you're looking for is one of the toughest jobs there is. And very few people speak enough on the personal liberty side from an actual strong position because there's always some level of hypocrisy with it. You look at the Republicans and Democrats, they're both big government and they're both small government, but it's just varying to which degree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah. Here's a question I probably should have asked at the beginning of this. How long do you usually stay on these things?
Dude, this is the first one I've ever done, man. If I sent you a private chat a while ago, I was like, dude, we can go as long as you want.
I just completely forgot about that. Yeah, I do have a show I got to get ready for in the morning.
Absolutely, dude.
But dude, let's maybe a good stopping point. But I'd love to come back and do whatever it is that you're doing. Currently, right now, I am trying to fill up my calendar. When that calendar gets full, then I might be like, all right, well, let's space this out a little bit. But at this point, the whole Daily Caller thing is brand new, and I have very limited media attention in terms of any requests to do these sorts of things. So I like it. Dude. So. Yeah,
I really appreciate coming on, man, and I'm absolutely more than willing to have you back whenever. I'm starting this thing, so I need to have guests. I don't know how much variety I'm going to be able to throw into my guests. So I love having this conversation. There's so much we didn't get to that I wanted to get to, and we broke off the conversation about the military, and we broke off the conversation about the charter schools. So we have. I would love to do this again, man. And this was the first episode, dude. And I think.
Let me know if you want me to take the other side. Next time I come on, I can be the Jen Psaki of the Democrat Party and just argue all of your points with meaningless, emotional arguments.
We're gonna have to circle back to that one. We'll get back. Yeah. We'll get back to you on that one. But
not to get into other things. She's so good at what she does. She is a terrible, she is a horrible bad person for lying. But dang it, I wish Republicans had people as good as Jen Psaki and as good as Nancy Pelosi.
Here's the thing.
Nancy Pelosi is so good at what she does. She's wrong about everything, and I can't believe people vote for her, but she's very good at what her job is.
Between now and the next time you're on here, listen to Michael Malice, listen to Dave Smith, and listen to Scott Horton. So Dave Smith is going to be the presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party next time around, most likely.
Dang it. Did I tell you that one of my buddies is currently the most powerful elected libertarian in the country?
Justin Amash? No, he's out.
No, he's out. Jeff Hewitt. He's a supervisor in Riverside County. I think he's got 800,000 people in his district, effectively making him the most quote unquote powerful libertarian in the country because he's got the most people in his district.
I'm gonna be kicking off the Libertarian Party here in Larimer County here soon, so We're trying to expand, dude. The Mises Caucus, like you definitely look into the Mises Caucus as well. The Libertarian Party is actually experiencing a pretty instrumental moment. People like Dave Smith, who I describe as he has the tenacity with the media of Donald Trump, with the intelligence and the wit of like anyone that isn't Donald Trump. But he's incredibly intelligent, great arguments. He's a comedian himself. But Michael Malice, he would be the press secretary. He is the single greatest troll there is, and he is so smart and sharp about it. And if you try to press him on it, he's gonna destroy you. And then Scott Horton, I really think there is no one better in foreign policy than Scott Horton. So those three men right there, I'll probably just end up sending you like real easy podcasts that they're on where that gives you a good idea of them. But they're like these ideas need to be put out there. They need to be heard because they are intentionally like stymied by the corp. Yeah. So, dude, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Yeah. Any words before you get out of here? Any plugs you got to do?
I don't know. We got Daily Caller Live airs on at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So what is that? 10 a.m. 9 a.m. your time.
Yeah, dude.
8 a.m. over here. We're up early putting all that show together every single day. We're getting some pretty big numbers, which has been interesting. I don't know how to, kind of catapulted into this whole Daily Caller Live thing. All of a sudden, like I go from like nobody reading my tweets to 1,000 people retweeting them, which is weird to me.
I'll start putting out the Kevinisms. Well, I'll take one of those retweets from you, man.
But yeah, no, that's Daily Caller Live is up and coming. Is doing its thing every morning. Got a country song coming out next Friday, which is weird but funny, I guess also. And then the Star Spangled Banter Tour coming to a town near you. So all of those things, keep an eye out. I don't know. Follow me wherever you have stuff at Jobob. This is what I use as my little like thingy, just at Jobob, because that's what it is on the Instagram, and that's it works. A good place to find me.
It absolutely works. And thanks again. Thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Dude, thanks for having me.
You were the first guest, and I'm hoping to God it's not the last time you're on here, and you'll probably be back pretty soon if it's not. So, dude.
Yeah, dude. I hope
Thank you. Everyone who has stuck around this long, I appreciate you sticking around. I hope it was a good conversation. Share it with your friends. Get it out there. This has been Kommon Nonsense with Kevin.